Tracy and Stephanie, are you both ready?
Good morning, I'm ready.
Morning, Judge. Yes, I'm ready.
Thank you very much. We're on the record in the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, proceeding number 24AL-0275E. I'm Aviv Segev. Today is March 3rd, 2025. It is now 10 a.m. This technical conference was scheduled by decision number C25-0122-I, dated February 21st, 2025. By decision number C25-0122-I, the company was instructed to do several things, including to update its cost service study, or CCS, and class allocated cost service study, or COCCS, based on the Commission's oral deliberations on February 12th and 19th, 2025, design new base rates to replace those tariff sheets filed with advice letter 871, prepare a summary of the new base rates to replace those on the tariff sheets filed with advice letter 871, complete bill impact summary in relation to the rates, and update sheet number 71 in the company's demand side management cost adjustment, or DSMCA, in accordance with the changes in projected sales revenue resulting from the final commission decision in this proceeding. The purpose of this technical conference is for the company to present the calculation of the base rates revenue requirements and the CSS, the results of the COCCS, the base rate summary, the updated DSMCA rider, and the bill impact analysis. Let's please start with brief introductions of the representative of the company who will be presenting at today's technical conference. Anybody? I can see. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Sopkin.
Good morning, Your Honor. Greg Sopkin, representing Black Hills Colorado Electric. As this is a technical conference and not a hearing, I'm just going to hand this off to the technical people. So I will hand it off to Michael Harrington, and he will describe what we will do today.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Greg. Good morning, Your Honor. Yes, my name is Michael Harrington. I'm the Director of Regulatory here for Black Hills. Thank you for the opportunity to present the results. We carefully listened to the Commission's deliberations, took the best notes that we could. We went back and listened to the recordings on some of the issues that maybe we weren't quite clear on. So we've done what we think captures the Commission's decision on the various issues. There are a couple of items that we will flag as things that we were not quite clear about. And so we may ask some questions either of you, Your Honor, or if the advisors are on, we might have just some clarifying questions as we walk through to make sure that we captured the decision correctly. On Friday, we filed the required documents. So Friday, we filed the revised revenue requirement study, or the cost of service study. That is now hearing exhibit 205. We filed an updated class cost of service study, which is now hearing exhibit 206. We filed the updated mitigation and rate design work papers, which are hearing exhibit 207 and 208. We did find this morning one change that we need to make to hearing exhibit 207 and 208. These worksheets contain some highly confidential information, but there's also some public information that's on these worksheets. And the public version that we filed inadvertently left off 2 pages of hearing exhibit 207 and 208. So we either need to file an amended or a revised version of the public version, or we can file a new hearing exhibit with just these 2 pages. I think we kind of leave that up to you, Your Honor, as to what you'd like us to do, but we do need to get 2 more pages into the record here for these 2 exhibits.
Again, since since this is not a hearing, I would refer to staff and see how they might want to go about, since they will be the ones engaging in conversation and have some question for you. My sense is that it should be filed soon. Whether it's as a new exhibit or not, it doesn't matter. Meaning, before we start talking about the exhibits, it should be filed. If does staff have any thoughts about the filing of the corrections to these to exhibits 207 and 208?
You, Judge Segev. I'm Ellie Friedman with the advisory staff for the commission. Also, this morning we have Ron Davis and Ian Fetters, also advisories. I would suggest, Mr. Harrington, probably the most efficient would be to just file make that filing exhibit as amended. So it's all in one place rather than 2 additional pages that are separate. If you could just make it amended, I think that's probably the most efficient way to do that.
And
Okay.
should we, is it something that can be filed in short order, Mr. Harrington?
Yes, it can be. Our paralegals will need to kind of work on some of the redacting, but we could get that in within a few hours here today.
If that could be done after the technical conference, because the information's available, I think that you're going to present today, making that filing after the technical conference would be sufficient,
Okay.
as far as we're concerned.
All right, then that's what we shall do. If we can all be sure to, if the company can be sure to file these 2 amended exhibits shortly after the end of the technical conference, that would be great. Thank you. And I will just remind the parties that this technical conference is being recorded, transcribed, and there's a video feed of there's a feed of both the audio and video of this technical conference on the Commission's YouTube channel. With that, unless Mr. Harrington, you have any additional opening remarks or introductions, I will. Do you, Mr. Harrington, have any additional remarks or introductions to make?
I do. I was just gonna kind of continue the list here just to clarify everything that we filed. Just continuing, we did file base rate summary sheets. That is now hearing exhibit 209 and 210. We updated the DSMCA, the demand side management cost adjustment tariff. That is in hearing exhibit 211. And then we presented recalculated bill impacts, which are now hearing exhibit 212 and 213. Also on Friday, we emailed the parties the executable documents. So we believe all parties have these files, as well as the files that we've submitted in the e-filing system. With that, Your Honor, I was going to turn it over to unless you had any other preliminary items.
No, I think if you're going to be the one primarily or only presenting, it is fine. Otherwise, I think it would be appropriate to have the other representative of the company introduce themselves.
Sure. So I'll give a brief, and then I'll let. So with me here today we have Miss Samantha Johnson and Doug Hyatt, and Samantha, I'll let you maybe introduce yourself, and then Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Samantha Johnson. I'm also a director on the regulatory team here for Black Hills. I am the witness that sponsored the revenue requirement in this proceeding, and I will be presenting the hearing exhibit 205, which is the technical conference revenue requirement.
Thank
Doug?
you.
Morning, Your Honor. My name is Douglas Hyatt. I'm the rates manager for Black Hills, and I had filed testimony and testified on class cost of service study and the mitigated rates proposed.
Thank you very much to the three of you. I will now turn it to the Commission's advisors to proceed with questioning and discussion.
Thanks. Actually, I'm going to just toss it back to Black Hills. Mr. Harrington, if you and your team want to start with your presentation, probably I'm assuming you'll start maybe with your cost of service study exhibit 205.
Yes, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Johnson. She's going to walk through the changes to the revenue requirement model that we made. And then Mr. Hyatt and I will talk about the changes that we made to the class cost of service and rate design. And then I will finish it up with a review of the overall customer bill impacts. I guess before I turn it over to Ms. Johnson, is there, Ms. Friedman, is there anything specific that we might need to address or questions that you might have as we're walking through it, or feel free to ask us as we go through?
Yeah, if it's okay, we'll just let you guys go, and we'll just pop on and ask any questions if they come up. Nothing here at the outset.
Great. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Johnson, and she's going to start going through the changes that we made to the revenue requirement model.
Thanks, Mike. So the company started with the rebuttal RRS, which was hearing exhibit 118. We then made changes per the commission's deliberations. Again, hearing exhibit 205 is the technical conference revenue requirement study. We've also added into that revenue requirement a summary worksheet at the beginning of the file titled Deficiency Impacts. This shows each input that was changed from the company's rebuttal revenue requirement based upon the commission's deliberations, and also shows the impact of that change to the overall deficiency. Any input changes that were made that are different from the company's rebuttal model were shaded in green for convenience to follow the changes that occurred. There are several additional attendant impact calculations that occur when a number is changed within the model. Those types of things include the net operating loss adjustment, the bad debt adjustment, the PUC expenses. Those are iterative within the revenue requirement model, and so those have not specifically been called out. I will make my best attempt to go through the changes to the model in the same order in which they were discussed by the commissioners. And so I'll pause to see if there's questions. Otherwise, I will share screen and we will start discussing.
I don't think we have any questions, so if you want to share your screen, and we'll get underway.
Thank you. All right, can everyone see my screen? Wonderful.
Yes.
So the first issue that was discussed by the commissioners related to the test year and the rate-based convention. The commission ordered a historical test year and a 13-month average rate base. Because those were the same as in the company's rebuttal revenue requirement or hearing exhibit 118, there were no changes to the technical conference model for those two decision items. The next category discussed was the weighted average cost of capital. Commission decision on that was a weighted average cost of capital of 6.9%, derived from an equity range of 47 to 49%, a 4.6% cost of debt, and an ROE range of 9.3% to 9.5%. For purposes of determining a revenue requirement model, specific inputs as opposed to the range have to be plugged in for the items previously mentioned. So you can see on the screen the amounts that the company plugged in for purposes of determining the revenue requirement. The the debt percentage was set at 53%, equity percentage at 47%. Cost of debt at that 4.6%, and the ROE at 9.5%. Down below is an example that really just shows that you can rearrange the inputs of the range in a number of ways to get back to that 6.9% weighted average cost of capital. I do intend to pause just a little bit after each category that's discussed in the event Ms. Friedman or someone else on your team has any questions or clarification. All right, I will then hand it back to Mike, and he is going to talk about the LM 6000 and the commission's deliberation related to those issues.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I'm going to take the next issue with regards to the LM 6000 generating asset. There were two decision points from the commission. The first was to allow the assets to be rolled into base rates and eliminate the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act rider. So that was our position. So there has been no change here to the model. That is consistent with our rebuttal model. The second decision point made by the commission was to approve staff's recommendation for the reimbursement of federal income tax expenses. And we believe this is maybe a clarification point that we were a little unclear on what the exact correct number is to use for the modeling purpose. In reading Ms. Segala's testimony, we were confused. There was two different numbers that she had referenced in her testimony on page 63. There was an amount of approximately a $3.3 million amount, and then later on that page, there was a reference to a $3.7 million amount. We are assuming that the commission's intent was to use $3.7 million amount amortized over 3 years. And so what we've done here is, as Ms. Johnson has on the screen, we have added the refund amount of $3.7 million amortized over a 3-year period. Another point of clarification, Ms. Friedman, that we would like to highlight that we've added it here to this rate case schedule for the rate case expenses on this schedule. We'll talk a little bit later on about the tracker and the GRSA mechanism that the commission approved. It's our belief or our thought that this amortization would be included in that GRSA tracker. And so we've added it to this schedule here, which really helps show kind of the total amount that we would the total amount in the 3-year amortization, and then the GRSA tracker would pick up after that 3rd year. That was not discussed or deliberated on, so that I'm flagging that as just a point of clarification for maybe later. That's all I had, and I think I'll turn it back to Samantha.
This is Ian Fetters with the advisory staff. Do you have those testimony references again for the 3.3 and the 3.7?
Yes, 3.3 million is on page 63, line 2 of Ms. Segala's testimony. And then the $3.7 million is on page 63, line 18.
Okay, thank you.
One other point of clarification. During the deliberations, there was some discussions among the commissioners about this as being a reduction to rate base. And then there was also some discussion about that this would be a reduction to base rates. And those two things are very different. And the way we interpret this is not we are not applying this as a reduction to rate base. Rather, this is an amortization of kind of an expense or a refund item, which would impact base rates. I think that's consistent with how staff modeled it as well. But that was just another kind of clarification point.
I'll just interject there. Yeah, I think that's consistent with what we had the discussion with the commissioners.
Great. Okay, Ms. Johnson's got the next several.
Thanks, Mike. The next item discussed by the commissioners was related to transmission revenues. They did agree with the company's approach in rebuttal to have no change to the transmission revenues. And so there is no change from hearing exhibit 118 to hearing exhibit 205. Similarly, related to the fleet investments, advisory staff recommended no adjustments to the company's fleet investments, and the commission agreed. This also results in no change to hearing exhibit 205. The next topic relates to production meters. The commission did deliberate and ultimately exclude a net plant amount of $525,000 of production meters. The company has removed from the statement D, which is the plant in service, the plant value of $673,000 from plant. Similarly, over on statement E, the company has removed $148,000 of accumulated depreciation. To get to the net plant amount of the $525,000. Got a little button here that's not letting me go to my next schedule, so please bear with me here while I try to get back to it. We've also removed the correct amount of accumulated deferred income tax related to the production meters on Schedule C-1. When the plant related to production meters is removed from the model, it automatically removes that level of plant from the depreciation expense calculation as well. So I just wanted to point that out, and we can talk more about that when we get down to the depreciation schedule. Mr. Fetters.
Hi. Removing the associated ADIT makes sense. I did notice there are 3 ADIT lines that are being tweaked there for the production meters. I imagine one of them is the accelerated depreciation. I think that's line number 41. What are the other 2 lines that are tweaked there?
Yeah, good question. So the first relates to the excess deferred federal income tax. So that EDFIT amount, which is really the difference in the federal income tax rate within the ADIT calculation. The next is the ADIT specifically for state, and then the other is just the ADIT for federal.
Okay, so it's all part of the income tax stuff, just different components.
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. The next item discussed relates to the current rate case expense. The commission decision on this was to allow $184,000 of recovery related to rate case expense for this proceeding using a 3-year amortization period at no carrying cost. The components of the various rate case expense have all been updated here in green, resulting in the amortization of $61,000 per year. And Mike, I will turn it back to you to talk about the prior rate case expense.
Yeah, on the prior rate case expenses, we have a couple of decision points that we heard. First was to allow recovery of the prior rate case expenses. During the deliberations, the commissioners referenced a total amount of $2.4 million which was the amount that we were originally seeking recovery of in our direct testimony. However, in our rebuttal testimony, we did reduce that amount to just a little over $2 million. Yep, Sam's got that highlighted. So that correct amount there is that $2 million for those prior rate case expenses. The second decision point, the commission approved staff's recommendation for the reimbursement of rate case expenses from the 2016 rate case. So that's the next line that Samantha's got highlighted there. This amount, we believe, is the $962,498. This amount was shown in Ms. Segala's answer testimony on page 194, line 18. So we think that's the right amount. I'll highlight just real quick that it appears that this amount is based on the previous decision that was based on a $550,000 cap. And we just note that the Denver District Court overturned that cap. So we the correct total amount of the rate case expenses from the last rate case was $733,864. But for this purpose, we're using the staff calculated amount there of the $962,498. Third decision point was that the commission authorized this to be amortized over a 3-year period. So you see the 3-year amortization, no carrying cost, and tracked through the GRSA mechanism. I think Samantha's got the next item for depreciation expense.
Thanks, Mike. The next item discussed and deliberated on by the commissioners related to the methodology used to calculate depreciation expense. The decision there was to calculate the depreciation expense using a 13-month average plant balance as opposed to a period end plant balance. The updates made here were to reflect the 13-month average plant balance and to just directly pull those balances from Statement D, which are the historical test year per book plant balances on that 13-month average. And so that on this tab, Ms. Friedman, just kind of for ease of visibility, is what has been updated, as nothing else changed other than the outputs of those calculations. It is important to note that when you update the depreciation expense to calculate from a 13-month average plant balance, this also requires recalculating the ADIT, or accumulated deferred income tax. The IRS requires the same method be used for calculating the depreciation for both tax and for rate-making purposes. And so when you switch from a period end balance to a 13-month average balance, it changes the timing and the amount of the depreciation expense that is recognized, which in turn affects those ADIT calculations. Again, for ease of visibility, we have highlighted in green any amount of ADIT that was updated in order to comply with the IRS rules. All right, the next topic was the AIP and STIP, so the annual incentive plan and short-term incentive plan from an expense perspective. Because the company had capped the AIP and the STIP expenses to no more than 15% on a per employee basis, in its direct filing, there is no change from hearing Exhibit 118 based upon the commission's deliberations. The next topic is the long-term incentive plan. Black Hills did, in its direct filing, remove 50% of the LTIP expenses, and pursuant to the commission's deliberations and ultimate decision, 2 adjustments were made to remove the remaining 50%, which total a reduction of $573,000. The first of these can be seen on H12. These are the direct expenses for the employees of Black Hills Colorado Electric. And the second is on H14, which removes the amount of LTIP expenses allocated from Black Hills Service Company. Going back to Schedule H12, the commission also deliberated and ruled upon a reduction of $315,000 for a vacancy leg. In the company's rebuttal filing, we did have an adjustment in there to remove $183,000. An additional adjustment of $132,000 needed to be made to get up to the commission ordered amount of the $315,000. Severance pay is the next adjustment that was made to hearing exhibit 205. This adjustment removes the full per book expense of the $305,000 from the technical conference revenue requirement. Again, you can see that adjusted in the green there. No change to the retiree medical or pension expenses as compared to hearing exhibit 118. The commission approved the company's pension and retiree healthcare expenses and also authorized a tracker for these expenses. The final item that I will discuss is the Aquila pension. The commission denied the request related to the purported overcollection of the Aquila amortization expense. Therefore, there is no change from hearing exhibit 118 for that deliberation item. And with that, Mr. Fetters, I see you're on.
Hi, sorry. Back on the severance adjustment, was it schedule H8?
Correct.
Just to 100% make sure I'm following. So that column in the initial rebuttal cost of service had adjusted a portion of the severance expenses down to, I think it was an average, and then so that number was just updated to basically remove all of it here.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So I believe in the company's direct filing, we utilized a 3-year average. In our rebuttal, which would have been hearing exhibit 118, we utilized a 5-year average, which I believe left about $80,000 or $90,000 in this adjusted total amount. Our interpretation of the commission's decision on this was to remove the severance expenses in totality, which you can see now the adjusted total is 0.
Okay, that's how I thought it was working. Just wanted to make 100% sure. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Mr. Harrington, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I've got a few issues to go through. The next item was the peak view deferred tax asset. So what we heard was kind of from the commission to provide guidance to another proceeding that we have open. The guidance was the company would have no recovery of the deferred tax asset under the weighted average cost of capital or using the weighted average cost of capital. In our cost of service model, we have already removed all of the investments for peak view since they are recovered outside of base rates. So there's no real impact to the cost of service model. The next item is related to security cost for the Pueblo 5 and 6 generating facility. The decision point there was to allow recovery, so no adjustment. So we have not made any changes for that. I will note that we had already removed land associated with the Pueblo 5 and 6 generating facility, so the land value has already been removed. A couple of other issues here. that I'll just cover. The commission approved the roll-in of the transmission cost adjustment and which is the TCA, and the purchase capacity cost adjustment, the PCCA. Commission approved the roll-in of those costs into rate base. And so we have rolled those costs in through the transmission adjustment. All the transmission investments made through the TCA will be rolled in here to base rates. We will reset the TCA mechanism to zero starting in 2024. We're using starting with the 2024 investments. And we have another proceeding open right now with the commission to review the TCA. But as part of this compliance filing, we will reset the TCA to zero and similarly the PCCA. The commission approved new depreciation rates. That was already reflected in our model. And the commission approved the adjustment for vegetation management expense. Okay, Ms. Johnson, you're going to cover trackers and then a review of the total outcome.
Thank you, Mike. The commission also approved trackers related to property tax expense, PUC fees, as well as the pension and retiree healthcare expenses. And so for purposes of getting the baseline amount established, the baseline amount for property taxes is $10,680,772. The baseline amount, or the amount included in base rates from which the company will track from for the PUC fees, is $974,172. And then the baseline amount for the pension and retiree healthcare expenses is $725,284. I will share screen again.
Just real quick, while she's sharing the screen, just a note for the advisors, it's important to kind of list these values so that we know from the accounting perspective what the baseline amount is so we can track. Sometimes years down the road, it gets hard to track the exact amount. So in the commission's final decision, it would be helpful if these final amounts or these baseline amounts were listed so that we all know what the amounts are that we're tracking from.
I think that makes sense. I got the PUC fee and the pension number. What's the property tax number again? I think it's on the screen somewhere, but
yeah, it's $10,680,772. And I will say, for just to kind of tag on to what Mike has said there, typically we do track the retiree healthcare and the pension expenses independently. And so while I initially offered the $725,000, Mr. Fetters, it may be helpful to also include these two amounts independently within the order. So that amount for the retiree healthcare that is a component of the base rates would be the $352,293. And then for the pension expense would be the $372,991.
I see.
Once you take into account all of the changes that were made within hearing exhibit 205, we can see we get to an overall deficiency after the tax gross up of the $17,031,520. This correlates to an overall cost of service from a base rate perspective of the $196 million. Before I turn it over to Mr. Hyatt for phase 2, I did want to just pause and ask if there were any clarifying questions from any of the advisory staff.
I think this is good so far. We appreciate all the information.
Yeah, I don't have any additional questions right now. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Your Honor, any questions at all?
Not for me, thank you.
Right, thank you. Mr. Hyatt, I'll turn it over to you.
Similar to Ms. Johnson, I started with our rebuttal class cost of service study, which is hearing exhibit 123, attachment DNH 20. I then took the updated revenue requirements study from Ms. Johnson and recalculated the class cost of service study, which is now labeled hearing exhibit 206. I then updated the revenue mitigation calculations, and we have two interpretations of the deliberations that we'll discuss. I'll discuss one, and Mr. Harrington will discuss an alternative. I then updated the base rates as discussed by the commissioners. First, the cost allocation methodology that is in the class cost of service study and used for the allocation of production and transmission costs that we had proposed for continued use was approved by the commission. So there are no other changes to the class cost of service study other than updating the mitigated rates or revenues that are going to be the result of the class cost of service study based upon the new revenue requirement study. The next topic that we want to discuss is the revenue mitigation as discussed by the commissioners. The commissioners decided that we should apply a uniform percentage increase to all classes. This uniform percentage is really the system-wide average of the required or deficiency in the revenue requirement. The uniform percentage increase for the technical conference is 9.48%. This is the system-wide average resulting from the class cost of service study. I'll now turn it over to Mike, who will talk about the alternative that we have reviewed.
Okay, I think I'm sharing my screen. What I have up here on my screen is hearing exhibit 207, the highly confidential version. This is the Excel model. However, yeah, I won't be talking about the pink tabs on here. But I did want to show the revenue mitigation fact, and this is the sheet that we were talking about earlier that we need to make, a revise so that this is part of the public version.
Sorry. So only the pink tabs contain the confidential?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And like I mentioned this morning, we inadvertently left off these first two worksheets in the public version. So we will make these first two sheets public version. And Doug, maybe since I have this up, if it might be helpful if you could just kind of walk through again, kind of how you came to the overall mitigation percentage.
Yes, so as shown on line number 8, the results of the class cost of service study for each class is shown with a system-wide average of 9.48%. There are a couple of total columns, like residential is a combination of residential service regular and residential service other, as well as large general service and large power classes. Those also have class totals, and then the subclass or each individual service type has its own percentage shown that's calculated in the class cost of service study. The one area that I would point out here is over at the large power service transmission class. It is the only class that results in a revenue decrease in the class cost of service study, meaning that currently we are collecting slightly more revenue than the class cost of service study would indicate with the roll-ins of the two riders. So based
So
on
yeah,
that,
Doug, let me
go
kind of
ahead.
take that. That kind of leads into some clarification or maybe even a separate interpretation of what we heard from the commissioners. Um, an option is to apply a uniform percent increase um, across all customer classes, which would be the 9.48% across every single class. But as Doug mentioned, because this one class has a fairly large decrease that is really skewing some of these percentages, we prepared an alternative that I think is similar to the commission's decision. I think it's in line with the commission's decision. Um, it is this alternative hearing exhibit. And in this case, what we did was, since that large power was getting, instead of them causing a big shift, we set them at 0 and then made a uniform percent increase across all other customer classes. Um, it's an alternative interpretation, I think, of kind of the commission's intent. But as you all know, when each decision gets layered upon itself, and can have some different impacts. I'll touch on the bill impacts, and we can share the bill impacts for both of these kind of situations. But we did want to kind of present this as kind of a consideration and an alternative to what we think we heard as applying a uniform percentage. But sometimes when you update the class cost of service model, it does produce some different results. So I think it is valuable in kind of looking at that again. So we've presented these kind of two scenarios that I think are again, I think they comply with what the commission's intent was in their discussion.
Mr. Harrington and Mr. Hyatt, I just want to confirm before we move on, just on this sheet that we're looking at, columns marked C and D, C, D, and E are added together to equal column B, is that correct? And
No,
then,
so, yep, sorry. So we have two residential subclasses. So we have a residential regular service and then a residential other service.
right,
These
okay.
these two are added to get the total residential.
Okay, sorry, yeah, total was, B is the total of Colorado. Oh, right. So D and E equals C, and then G, oh, wait a minute. G is the sum of H and I?
G is the sum, yes, of these two.
Right, and then same for K and L. They
That's
total to,
large power. We have three three
over here.
subclasses of large power: secondary,
Okay.
primary, and transmission. So these three add up to the large power total.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that, and I think I understand what you were doing here in your alternative.
Right. There was a lot of discussion among the commissioners about the impacts, that mitigation has on commercial. And so that's kind of my comments about, I think this might be in line with some of their intent of not necessarily impacting the large power transmission class as much, but still applying a uniform percentage across all other classes. So, okay, so with that, Doug, I think we wanted to just go through the rates. Tell me which tab is final. Is this the right tab,
Yes.
Doug?
Yes,
Okay.
they are.
Okay.
So following the discussion of the commissioners, for the residential customer class, as shown in green here, we have maintained the current tiered or block volumetric kilowatt hour charges. So 0 to 500 kilowatt hours is the first tier, and then all kilowatt hours above 500 is the second tier. And so that is the default rate currently, and we are maintaining that as the default rate as discussed by the commission. We also have, we're maintaining the residential time of use rates as proposed as an option. And those are following the commissioner's discussion around a peak period or on-peak period between 5 and 8 p.m. on non-holiday weekdays, and a price ratio of 2 to 1, with on-peak being twice the rate of the off-peak period. Not showing here are, since we're going to maintain a tiered default, we are going to maintain the medical exemption rate, and that rate will have the same monthly customer charge of $8.77, and the class average, which will be 0.13379 or 13.379 cents per kilowatt hour. So that is the class average. For the other classes, go ahead.
One second. Yeah, let me touch a little bit on the time of use rates. We did hear, we were a little unclear on a couple of decisions or a couple of comments from the commissioners. So with regards to our time of use rates, we have currently an optional time of use tariff for all of our classes of customers. One of the proposals that we made was to align the various time of use rates. And I believe the commissioners agreed to align the time of use rates amongst the different classes of customers so that we have kind of consistency across all classes, which means similar or maybe I should say the same on-peak and off-peak period. Naturally, the focus of the commissioners is on residential rates, which is understandable. But we just want to clarify that the decision there for the 5 to 8 p.m. on-peak period is really for all classes of customers, which is what we have modeled here in our rates. The second point that we were a little confused on, and maybe some clarification there was some discussion about when to implement the time of use rate changes. We wrote down in our notes a couple of different dates. I think there was some discussion about implementing the changes to the time of use rates after the summer, and we either wrote down either 2025 or 2026. So we're not quite sure exactly what the commission's intent was on that. I will note that we have currently existing time of use rate tariffs that we do have customers on those tariffs. So we can't simply delay the implementation changes. So our proposal or our interpretation here is that we have made the changes to the time of use rate tariffs, and so those changes would be made effective on March 22 with all other rate changes. So I kind of just wanted to flag that on the time of use rate issue. And if that's something different, then we would need to know and figure out a different path for those customers that are currently on time of use rates. Okay, Doug, do you want to touch on the other classes of customers here and the rate design?
Yes. So the other classes, the commercial classes, include small general service, large general service, and large power service. And all of these are rates based upon the output of the class cost of service study and the mitigation of revenues as previously shown at 9.48%. So this rate design follows my testimony and the results of the revised or the final revenue requirement model. And so the design follows what we had proposed, with all time of use rates having or up to 8 p.m. instead of a 7 p.m. Currently, most of the time of use is much earlier, but these would all have a 2-to-1 ratio and a 5 to 8 p.m. on-peak period of Monday through Friday, non-holiday weekdays. So with these, we have changed or updated all of them, the monthly charges, demand charges, and kilowatt hour charges according to the revenue requirement and mitigation.
Hey, Doug, can you just talk about the revenue proof file and where advisors can look at to show the revenue neutrality?
There are 46 different pages. They're all marked pink for confidentiality because of the number of customers and in those specific tabs. But the revenue proof can be followed through with all the detail, the adjusted billing determinants, and the revenue for each class is shown first. And then the different subclasses in each of the major classes are shown and how those are determined. So all of these rates can be seen in high detail with the billing determinants and the revenues to prove out that we are designing the rates to equal the results of the class cost service study and the mitigation.
Okay. So just a couple of more issues to go through. There was some discussion about a heat pump rate, and then we're aware of a pending motion filed by WRA about a heat pump rate. We have not modified our class cost of service model or presented any billing determinants for those heat pump rates. Our understanding is the company would be required to file something by 2027. And that can be done at a later filing, but we have not modeled anything here for heat pumps. Couple other decision points. The commission ordered the company to make a separate filing to revise our low-income funding surcharge. This is called the Black Hills Energy Assistance Program, or the BEAP, BHEAP. So we will make that filing at the right time and revise the funding fees so that we can eliminate or remove the wait list. So that filing will come in a few months. And then final, commission ordered the company to work with commission staff to address the bill format concerns that were raised by Commissioner Plant. So we will do that and work with staff to update our bill format to address those concerns. Okay, let's see. I think let me pull up bill summaries. One other small change there throughout our tariffs. There'll be a number of, we call them administrative changes, changing nomenclature and changing names. We are working on those tariff sheets. The commission ordered that we file actual tariff sheets on March 10th. So that will be next Monday. So we are working on updating those tariff sheets. I just wanted to highlight a name change for our small general service class. We have two subclasses of the small general service. One is called a demand and one is called a non-demand subclass. We're going to update the name. The small general service class tariff, there is no demand charge on the tariff. It was a carryover name from the previous rate case. So we are going to modify that and update the tariffs for that. Okay, let me pull up the bill impacts. And I believe so the bill impacts from these rates are shown in hearing exhibit 212, and then the alternative interpretation of the mitigation is shown in hearing exhibit 213. So I'll start with 212 here. This top section is a residential, we call it a low usage residential bill impact. And so these are for customers that have 300 kilowatt hours a month. And so for these low use customers, the bill impact here is 5.5% bill increase And then we've also modified the DSMCA rate as well.
Mr. Harrington, are you
Yep.
intending to
Oh.
share your screen right now?
I sure am. And
Okay.
let me, I closed it and let me go back. Okay, there we go.
Okay, can see now. Thank you.
Okay, so we present three different bill impacts for the residential class, a small or a low use customer, an average, and a high. So for a low use residential customer of 300 kilowatt hours per month, the rate impact here would be 5.5% increase. For an average customer bill, our average customers use approximately 600 kilowatt hours a month. And so for the average customer, the bill increase would be 6.2%. And for a higher use customer of 900 kilowatt hours, the impact would be 7.1%. And then scrolling down to small commercial, a low use customer on a small general service, this would be small commercial, is a 6.4% increase. A average small commercial would be 6.3, and then a high use small commercial customer would be 6.3 as well. In the alternative scenario, I'll just highlight the residential average here of 6.7 under the alternative. So as you can see from, I'll scroll back here. We were at 6.2. So if the commission wants, or take that second interpretation of the mitigation, it does increase the residential rate slightly, but it would have a significant impact on the large power transmission class. So these are two kind of alternative or two options for the commission that I think should the commission should consider those two. Let's see, with that, I think that is all we had intended to cover. So I'll just close and offer if there's any questions, but thank you for giving us this opportunity and to present. Our team listened to the deliberations. We think we accurately calculated what the commission's decisions were and the intent of the changes that the commission had. Like I mentioned, we're working on updating the tariff sheets, which will be filed on March 10th. And then new rates will be effective on March 22nd. So with that, though, I will pause if there's any questions or if we missed anything.
I don't think we have any more questions. We do appreciate you walking us through this, and we've noted that you do have some questions about specific areas, but we appreciate what you've provided here, and we're mindful that you have been directed to file those tariffs by next Monday. So thank you very much for everything you presented today.
You very much to the company and everybody who attended. Any final thoughts? Anybody?
I guess one maybe question, Your Honor, if the advisors have maybe an idea of when the written decision might come out, if that could be helpful if they have any idea.
The best I can tell you, Mr. Harrington, is that the decision will issue when the commission has reviewed it.
Understood. Thank you. Thought I'd try.
All right. Anything else? Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.